My name is Daniel, and this happened about 4 years ago when I was 24. At the time, I was working as a janitor for an office building downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than most late-night jobs, and I liked the quiet. The place had 5 floors, but only one company operated in it. They rented out the whole building, and they wanted it cleaned after hours so their employees wouldn't be disturbed. That meant my shift started at 10 and ended around 5 in the morning. Usually, it wasn't too bad, just me, a couple of other cleaners, and a security guard who sat downstairs by the front entrance. The 5th floor was always my least favorite to clean. It was technically still part of the building, but from what I was told, the company never fully moved into it. Rows of unused cubicles, desks covered with dusty computer monitors that hadn't been touched in years, and stacks of chairs pushed into corners. The overhead lights flickered more often up there, and the air was always colder than the rest of the building, almost like the ventilation system was stuck. Most nights, I'd put in earbuds and just power through it, but one night, I went up there alone, and I'll never forget what happened. I was vacuuming along one of the far rows when I noticed something strange. One of the cubicle chairs was pulled out, slightly angled, like someone had just stood up from it. I paused, staring at it, and told myself one of the daytime staff must have been moving things around earlier. I turned my back and kept working. 10 minutes later, when I circled back with the mop, the chair was tucked neatly back under the desk. I stopped dead. I knew for a fact I hadn't touched it, and I hadn't seen or heard anyone else come onto the floor. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'm more tired than I thought, I muttered to myself. But then I turned off the vacuum for a second, and that's when I heard it. The faint sound of typing. At first, I thought maybe someone left a computer running, but the sound was distinct, the rapid clicking of fingers on a keyboard. The sound carried softly from a cubicle row ahead of me. I walked slowly toward it, every hair on my arm standing up. The typing went on for maybe 10 more seconds, then stopped. By the time I reached the cubicle, the desk was completely bare. No computer, no keyboard, not even a mouse. I told myself I must have imagined it and went back to work, but the entire time I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I passed an empty cubicle, I expected to see someone sitting there, just out of the corner of my eye. When I finally reached the last row of cubicles, I froze. Sitting dead center on one of the desks was a keyboard. Just a keyboard. No computer, no monitor, no cables. Just the keyboard. And one of the keys was pressed down. Not like it was broken. Pressed down, as if a finger was holding it. I stood there staring, waiting for it to pop back up. After what felt like forever, it slowly released, making the faintest click as it reset. That was enough for me. I turned around to grab my cart and nearly tripped over my mop bucket. That's when I heard the sound of a chair rolling across the floor behind me. I spun around. One of the cubicle chairs had moved several feet back from the desk, as if someone had just pushed it away. My chest tightened, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I bolted down the stairs so fast I nearly slipped. I didn't stop until I was standing at the front security desk, out of breath. The guard looked at me with concern and asked if I was okay. I told him flat out that someone was on the 5th floor messing with me, and I wasn't going back up there. He frowned and turned to his monitor. After a moment, he shook his head. He said the cameras hadn't picked up anyone entering or leaving the 5th floor all night. I left my cleaning supplies up there and refused to finish my shift. The next night, when I came back, I asked to be reassigned to a different floor. They agreed, and I never worked on the 5th again. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that keyboard. Who or what was pressing those keys, and what would have happened if I stayed just a few minutes longer? If you've made it this far, consider subscribing. I post videos just like this 3 to 4 times a week, and trust me, the next ones are even better. I used to work the late shift at a mid-sized insurance company. My job wasn't glamorous, mostly data entry, processing claims, double-checking paperwork. The office was fine during the day, busy and full of chatter, but after 7 o'clock, the building emptied out fast. By 8, it was just me, the cleaning crew on the upper floors, and the occasional manager working late. One night, around 10, I got an email from my supervisor asking me to pull some older claim files from the basement archive. That basement always unsettled me. The stairwell leading down was narrow, the air turned stale and damp the deeper you went, and the fluorescent lights flickered in a way that made it hard to tell if it was your eyes adjusting or if the bulbs were truly failing. I grabbed the request form and headed down. The door to the archive creaked louder than usual when I opened it. Inside, the rows of metal shelves stretched further than I remembered, almost endless, lined with thousands of manila folders. My footsteps echoed, bouncing back unnaturally, like the room was larger than it should have been. As I scanned the shelf numbers, I heard what I swore was the sound of another set of footsteps, slow, deliberate, keeping pace with mine. I froze, holding my breath. The sound stopped. I shook it off. Maybe it was the pipes. Maybe it was the building settling. I found the section I needed, and as I crouched to check the bottom shelf, I noticed something strange. There were fresh papers scattered across the floor, handwritten notes, messy scribbles in ink, some pages torn as if ripped out of a notebook. I picked one up. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic, and it said, "Don't let them put you on file." My stomach dropped. I put the paper back and stood up. At the far end of the aisle, I saw the outline of someone standing perfectly still between the shelves. My mouth went dry. The figure wasn't moving, but I could feel their eyes on me. "Hello?" I called out, voice cracking in the silence. The figure tilted its head, just slightly. Then, without a sound, it turned and slipped behind another row of shelves. I ran to catch up, but when I turned the corner, the aisle was completely empty. No sound, no movement, nothing. That's when I noticed something that hadn't been there before. The folder section I had just walked past was now open, a single manila file pulled halfway out. Against my better judgment, I grabbed it. My hands were shaking as I opened it up. Inside wasn't insurance paperwork. It was a photograph, black and white, grainy. It was of me, sitting at my desk, from earlier that night. I dropped the folder instantly. My heart pounded as I bolted for the stairwell, files forgotten. I didn't look back, not even once. The next morning, when I went to explain myself to my supervisor, I told him I couldn't find the requested files. He frowned, confused, and said, "That's strange. We don't keep anything in the basement anymore. We cleared it out 2 years ago." I used to work the graveyard shift at a massive distribution warehouse just outside the city. It was one of those places that ran 24/7, with different crews rotating in and out to keep things moving. By the time I clocked in at 11 o'clock, the day shift would already be long gone, and only a handful of us would be left rattling around in the endless aisles of towering shelves stacked with boxes. The first few weeks weren't too bad. It was boring work, scanning pallets, driving the forklift, logging shipments. But the warehouse had this strange emptiness to it, even when a few other people were working. The ceilings were so high, the shelves so long, that I often felt like I was being swallowed up by the building itself. One night, about 3 weeks in, I was assigned to inventory a section all the way at the farthest end of the warehouse. This was Zone F, a place most of the crew avoided unless we absolutely had to go there. Nobody said it outright, but I noticed people traded shifts or swapped tasks if Zone F came up. I figured it was just laziness until I walked down there myself. The air was different, colder. Even though the warehouse was climate-controlled, Zone F always felt like stepping into a basement. My flashlight barely cut through the shadows between the racks. I tried to shrug it off and started scanning boxes, but then I heard something like the sound of wheels on the concrete floor. It wasn't the forklift. It was lighter, almost like someone pushing a cart slowly. The sound echoed faintly, as if it were weaving between the shelves. "Hello?" I called out. My voice bounced off the metal and came back to me hollow. No answer. I kept working, but every few minutes, I'd hear it again. Rolling wheels, stopping, starting again. I finally turned a corner, and in the distance, way at the end of the row, I saw what looked like a handcart parked at an angle, except the warehouse didn't even use those. I blinked, looked down at my scanner for half a second, and when I looked back up, the cart was gone. Just gone. By then, my nerves were shot, so I headed back to the main floor. When I told one of the older guys about it, he just looked at me and said, "Don't follow it next time." Then he walked away before I could ask what he meant. The next week, I drew Zone F again. This time, I was determined not to let my imagination get the best of me. I was halfway down one of the aisles when I noticed something strange about the boxes. Each one had a label with dates on them. Most were recent 2022, 2023. But tucked between the newer stacks were boxes with dates decades old. 1975, 1961, even one labeled 1943. The warehouse wasn't even built until the late 90s. I pulled one of the old boxes down. It wasn't full of merchandise or shipping labels. It was filled with photographs. Hundreds of them, black and white, faded and curling at the edges. Each one was of people standing in the warehouse itself. The strange part? The building looked exactly the same as it did now, same shelves, same layout. And the people, none of them were smiling. They stood stiff, staring directly at the camera, eyes wide open. I shoved the box back and stepped away. That's when I heard it again. The cart, rolling just out of sight. I spun around, shining my flashlight. My beam landed at the end of the aisle. There was a figure there now, half hidden in shadow, standing completely still. I thought it was one of my co-workers, but something about the height, the posture, it was wrong, too rigid. "Who's there?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure slowly turned and walked away, but there was no sound of footsteps, just that faint rolling noise. I backed up until I hit the cross aisle and bolted back to the main floor. I told my supervisor what I'd seen, but he just looked annoyed. "Don't go pulling boxes that aren't on your list. Some things in Zone F aren't meant to be touched." The way he said it chilled me, like he wasn't surprised at all. The next night, Zone F was temporarily closed for maintenance. No one went back there. But I couldn't stop thinking about those photographs. I swear I saw one face in the stack that looked familiar. It looked like one of my co-workers. I'll never know if it really was, but I can't unsee it, and it still creeps me out when I think back to this experience. You're not the only one who likes these dark stories. Join the others who can't look away. Subscribe to never miss the next one.